Now, lead questions for today. Question number 1. Looking at today's readings, or today's first reading and the gospel. First reading from 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 42 to 44, and the gospel of St. John chapter 6, verse 1 to 15 that we have just read. Looking at those two readings, how would you describe the God we serve? Read 2 Kings about Elisha, what he did. Read the Gospel of St. John about Jesus and what he did. The two of them represent God. How would you describe the God of Elisha, who is also the God of Jesus Christ? Question 2. Identify the godly virtues which St. Paul urges Christians to imbibe in today's second reading, Ephesians 4, 1 to 6. Second reading, Ephesians 4, 1 to 6. There are godly values that St. Paul urges us, believers, to imbibe. What are they? Question 3. Are today's readings in any way related to the Eucharist? If so, what lessons must we, who regularly partake in the Eucharist, what lessons must we draw from the readings? Question clear? If they are related to the Eucharist, then those of us who partake in the Eucharist daily or every Sunday, what lessons must we draw from these readings? And question 4. How are you challenged today as a Christian living in Nigeria, a country where many privileged people, we have few privileged people, maybe 5% or less, 5% out of 100, living 95% of poor people. So privileged people are about 5% put together. Now, how are you challenged today as a Christian living in Nigeria, a country where many of the 5% privileged people carry on a life of vanity, a life of vainglory, a life of senseless consumption and wastefulness amidst widespread degrading poverty for the majority of people, dehumanizing poverty for the majority of people? How are you challenged today as a Christian? Yes, Chichi.
I want to attempt question number 1.
Okay.
Looking at today's first reading and the gospel, and John, how would you describe the God we serve? I think the first thing that struck me with those two readings was that it was God. It was Elisha in the first instance and Jesus who actually noticed the needs of the people. It is
not the people who went to cry to him.
Exactly.
It was the man of God. It was the holy man in Elisha. It was Jesus Christ who noticed that these people will collapse on the way if we send them. They are hungry. They have been with me all this while. They are hungry. What can we do about it?
And so, and what immediately struck me was the Bible verse where Jesus said that we shouldn't worry about what we eat or what we
how we clothe ourselves.
And how we clothe ourselves and the rest of it, because God knows that we need these things and that he will provide them. So for me, this was also a good example that the God that we serve is a provider. The God that we serve is one who sees our needs. The God that we serve is the one that goes ahead of us, even before we recognize our needs or even before we ask for our needs.
He is there. My people say, it's only Ruburi, oh my hero Chinaya, oh Murihani, over vessel Esoyani. The thing we frog the chop, they climb tree. It is his God, it is the frog's God that has given him such chi. What do they call chi? Such spirit, such head. It is his God meaning God takes care of his own. God cares. I think the word should be care. God cares. So, what you are saying about our God is that He cares. He takes care of our, even before we know we have a need, He knows. Give her a round of applause. Would you be able to sing that song to people outside? Yes, Jacob.
I wanted to answer question 4, but also question 2. I will start with question 4. Taking from the context of generosity of God, I'm very challenged today. The work we do, like Father mentioned, each time you see a sick person or you visit a sick person, we had a case here last Sunday that was presented to us. Each time you see a sick person, you put yourself in that sick person's shoes. Then it becomes very difficult to come out of that. And working as a Vincentian is very, very challenging. Recently, we had a case where the husband was sick. The husband was, had impairment in his speech. The wife was down with cancer. Such a situation, is difficult to come off it. So today, if you look around, we had I think for the past 1 week or so, we had a case of OB Cubana where, people attributed the whole thing as being wasteful, spending money all over the place. So I am challenged today, whatever it is I have should be channeled rightly.
Whatever I have should be channeled wisely.
Wisely. If you look around, you don't have to have so much. Because don't forget, even now, a beggar is having a choice. Each time we go to do, sharing clothes, you have this kind of shoe that, they call it, I swear to God. When you give to them, they don't take it anymore. You need to know. If you bring any clothes that is not nice, they also don't take it. So now, we have Chidi Ebere has been doing very well for us. Sometimes he dry clean them before giving to us, and few others. So those are the clothes. When you give to them, they select. So I challenge us today to be more generous because our God is generous.
All of us who are in a position to dry clean clothes for ourselves, if we are sending clothes to the poor, please dry clean them too. Why would you send your dirty clothes to the poor? You want to spread infection? Or do you think that the more privileged people don't get infection? So, of course, it's not only 1 or 2 people. Of course, anybody who is sending clothes to the poor, if you don't have money to take to dry cleaner, wash it and iron it. If possible, put it in some cellophane paper and present it to the poor. That's part of acknowledging the dignity of this poor person. St. Augustine says, that is me, but for the grace of God. Here I go, like that person, but for the grace of God. What makes me or you think that I am better than anyone? And I have shared with you here a number of times. I say, look, when I was in primary school, those days we used to do primary 7. When I was in primary 7, the person who was our head boy, who was older than most of us anyway, but he was the best in the class. His father did not have money to send him to secondary school. He never went beyond primary school. And I'm saying that if I went beyond primary school and went up to university and my siblings went up to, it is not because we are smarter than anyone. It is because we happen to be born in a particular place at a particular time. What makes the life of a Swedish or Denmark person better than Nigerian? It is not because of accident of where you were born. Therefore, we all need to recognize that these are just accidents of to whom I was born and when I was born. When? Because even a poor child born in 1950 who managed to go to school is better off than the poor child today, isn't it? So, accident of when I was born, where I was born, to which parents I was born, makes all the difference. Makes all the difference. So if we recognize that, then we'll be more kind, more compassionate towards people. I want to once again congratulate Jacob for the work that you do. The work you do is godly work as St. Vincent de Paul. And the work St. Vincent de Paul does all over the world and especially in this country, it is godly work. And what he said at the beginning, take note of it. It is not only that on our behalf, the St. Vincent de Paul goes in search of these poor people and help them. They carry what is called vicarious trauma. You saw last week, my sister was weeping here.
Yes, yes.
Now, what she was expressing is the trauma of seeing that lady in that condition, isn't it? So you deal with these people in miserable conditions. You yourself, you are getting sick. It is called trauma counter-transference or vicarious trauma. My brother, Father Richard, has just done his doctorate on that topic. Vicarious trauma. The trauma that people carry, people who are helpers, people who are in the helping profession, including priests, the trauma they carry simply by listening to the horrible stories of people or watching people who are suffering. All of you who are in St. Vincent de Paul and similar organizations in various churches, may the Lord bless you abundantly. Give him a round of applause. Yes, all right.
I have question 2. Can I go ahead?
Okay.
Okay, the godly virtues mentioned by St. Paul in question 2. You have meekness, patience, forbearance, love.
There's one you are missing. Perhaps the most prominent one.
Meekness,
Meekness,
patience,
tolerance,
forbearance, and love. Love is the biggest, Father. Unity of spirit.
unity. Give him a round of applause. I mean, Paul emphasized unity to the extent of making them recognize that we are of one God, one baptism, one Lord, right? To show the importance, the critical importance of unity among us. Yes, Mr. Oko.
But I wanted to add to question 4.
Yes.
And say that the challenge I have is that the world has enough resources to feed the human race. The problem is uneven distribution of these resources and the greed of a few people.
The world has enough resources. That is my position. Some of you know that I wrote a book in 1992, which I call The Politics of Population Control. Some of you know that. The world has enough resources to feed the multitude of people, but the greed of a few will not let it happen. Because as they say, the world can take care of the needs of many more billions, but the world cannot take care of the greed of even one person. One greedy human being may require the resources that can feed the whole of FCT. We can see it happening, beginning to happen, right? One greedy human being. So if human beings don't check their greed, if societies are not organized in such a way as to check the greed of individuals, the primitive greed of individuals, then you can bring our population down to 500 million. That wouldn't guarantee that everybody will have reasonable life because people will be greedy. And the few greedy individuals can pauperize the multitude. So the world, it is said, the world can sustain the needs of multiple people, of billions of people, but the world cannot sustain the greed of even one person. So what is the problem? Greed. And especially greed in a society like our own that is not organized enough to tax people who have in order to support people who do not have. I have told you here before that I spent some time in Singapore. And in those organized societies, in Singapore, you want to live in a duplex for yourself and have a compound of 1,000 square meters. Well, you will pay 10, 20 times the cost of somebody who is in a flat. Do you understand? You pay 10, 20 times the cost of somebody who is in a flat. So you made money, so you can have your duplex and you can have your space. But the money you will pay will provide for 10, 20 families, houses. That is why there is no one in that country that does not have accommodation. You want to ride a G-Wagon. You want to ride Bentley or Lamborghini. Well, the money you will use to register the G-Wagon, the money you will use to register the Lamborghini is enough to buy a bus to transport poor people in the society. Now, that is how civilized people organize their society. In our own case, until recently, if you buy a Volkswagen Beetle or you buy Mercedes-Benz, it was registered with the same amount, right? Until very recently, register with this. How can that be? But that is how we have been functioning. So a civilized society, and those of you who will get into political positions, a civilized society is organized in such a way that to check the greed of people, to check, all that would have been done with the excesses of last weekend, with the excesses we saw in Oba last weekend is, government agencies will just take note of them and take note of who they are, take their names down, and the next day go after them as to their taxes, period. Nobody will complain. Nobody will complain about how you are. But can you imagine if you bought a Mercedes-Benz for 20 million naira and you need 5 million naira to register it? Will you buy another Mercedes-Benz? This is it. This is how societies are organized. In case some of you think that Father George cries too much, Father George is always talking about poverty and so on. That is how societies are. Nobody will stop you from using Mercedes-Benz, from using Bentley, from using whatever. But what you will pay to register it in order to put it on the public road and pollute the environment. I hope you know that the pollution of Toyota, my Toyota, the pollution is not the same as the pollution of those 8-cylinder vehicles that are running our road. I hope you know. So you pollute the environment 4 times than I pollute the environment, and me and you are paying the same tax to put the car on the road. It shouldn't be. So I agree with you. The world has enough resources to go around. And by the way, please take note. Nobody is talking about everybody being the same. I have never spoken about everybody in the society being the same. All I always say is that Nigerians say fingers are not equal, but look at my fingers. Each one is looking well fed, isn't it? Is there any finger that is not looking well fed? Is there anyone that is not strong enough to perform its role? So fingers are not equal, yes, but each finger gets its basic needs, and that is what every child of God deserves.
The second realization, Father, is that the treasures and resources that God has put in our care is not just for us and our immediate families. They are meant to be shared.
The treasures God has put on our laps, let us say we are so smart, and there are smart individuals. We are so smart that we are able to harvest. Okay, the mango tree in front of our house, the mango tree has produced and is ripened. And we are the ones who have the smartness and the agility to climb the tree. And we climb the tree, and there are 100 ripe mangoes. Because we are the only one that can climb the tree. Does it mean those 100 ripe mangoes belong to us? Now just think about it that way. Other people are there. The children cannot climb. The women cannot climb. Some weaker men cannot climb. But I am able to climb and harvest the 100 ripe mangoes. Do the 100 ripe mangoes belong to me alone? Definitely not. That's the way I want us to look at it. That when God gives us those prerogatives to earn more, we have been given the intelligence and the ability to earn more so that we can help others of God's children. And me, I have reasoned this out. Let me tell you, I have reasoned this out. How many of you women here have 5 children, and one child is doing very well, and the other children are not doing very well, and you're just looking at the one doing very well to waste the money? You just look at him to waste the money and buy private jet and so on, and the brother is suffering, is sick, no money to treat him. How many of you mothers will keep quiet? No. And that is how our God is. That's how our God is, that our God has provided for all. If some of his children are smarter than others, well, they are smarter than others so that they can help those others in many, many ways. That is how, and what societies do through taxation and other arrangements is when people will not do that out of their own volition, the structures of society force them to do that. And this is one of the things that Christian civilization has helped to do over the years. I mean, those of you who join the rest in blasting religion and blasting Christianity. This is what Christian religion has helped to establish in Europe. They are no longer going to church, but Chichi, you would admit that Christian civilization over the centuries helped them to organize this. That's why you are old, you are 65 in Europe, you don't need to bother about what you are going to eat. In many countries, the government takes care of you. You are 65 in Kogi State, where I come from, and you work for 35 years in government. Well, good luck to you. This is it, that God has made provision for the world. And some individuals have been given the capacity, the prerogative to harvest these things. It is meant to be harvested for everyone because the goods of the world have a universal destination. That's how the Catholic social teaching puts it. And I want you to repeat after me. The goods of the earth have a universal destination. That means that everything that the earth produces is meant for everyone. That's what it means, universal destination. That doesn't mean that the person who climbed the tree and found 100 ripe mangoes, he could take 3 or 4. He could even take 5. But the remaining 95, he should bring it down, right? He should bring it down and share with others. Give him a round of applause. What question is remaining? Question 3. Yes.
Today's readings are related to the Eucharist. And if so, what are the lessons we must derive from them? Father, one of the first lessons I think we can derive from the Eucharist is that of thanksgiving. Thanksgiving to God for what He has done for us. As we gather, as we partake in the body and blood of Christ, listening to His words, we have to give thanks for Him at all times.
Okay, that's our reaction, our response to the Eucharist should be thanksgiving at all times.
Yeah.
Next.
And then the next one is sharing of what we have, sharing of our resources.
Actually, when people are thankful, they share, isn't it? Is it not when people are thankful that they share puff in this church? When people are thankful, they share. Though some people overshare, like what happened last weekend. But sharing is an imperative of thankfulness. Sharing is an imperative of thanksgiving and thankfulness. If you indeed you are thankful, you open your treasures. You open your treasures. When the wise men from the east came and saw Jesus, they were very thankful. What did they do? They opened their treasures and offered gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So, thank you, sharing. Give him a round of applause.